Nice.
Sorry about that.
So we have a pretty big Android team, and so I work a lot with our Android developers, and we have a pretty big server backend kind of search indexing and data analytics teams as well. So there's many sides to this thing, and prior to doing what I'm doing today, I worked actually quite a bit on front end stuff. I was just trying to think. I think I stopped doing that maybe 4 years ago or so. Although it looks like from the stuff here, I think I still have enough knowledge that I can hopefully share something useful with you guys. Yeah, let's dive into it. Oh, and then I should just say, I'm here to talk about some specific stuff about React, but also, as Abhi said, anything about what it's like to be in the industry, what it's like to get a job, what it's like to have a job, what it's like to get your first job. I'm definitely very happy to spend some time talking about that as well. So that being said, we have just a couple of slides. Oops, you disabled my screen sharing. Can you make me a co-host?
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, there we go.
All right. Just make sure I don't have anything crazy on here. Cool. Okay. Let me share my desktop. So today we're talking about various aspects of React. We'll talk about some about hooks, some about Axios, which maybe isn't React directly, but is another useful tool you can use, and then about Redux, and then I guess we'll recap some amount of it. So from what I understand, you all have been learning React over the last couple of weeks or months. And so this will be kind of an extension of that. Please, I don't know exactly how much background you have. So if you feel like the things I'm saying are either way too easy, we already know that, or whoa, I don't understand this, please stop me. Because I don't fully know where you're coming from. So I will sort of start talking at some level, and then also, please don't be afraid to be the one to raise your hand and say hey, I don't know about the others, but it's too difficult for me. Because probably the others feel the same way. Okay, let's dive into it. So let's talk about hooks first. How to describe it. So with React, maybe the way that folks there's a couple of ways to define components in React. There is, I think the two main ways are either you can define it as a class or you can define it as a function. And we'll just look up some examples. One thing you'll probably see me do a lot is Googling stuff just to figure out an answer. That's a practice I would encourage you to get very, very good at. I think one thing, and this is maybe tangential, but talking a little bit being in industry. One thing I think that sets the best programmers apart is they're way better using Google and just finding the answers. Okay, so you may have seen something like this, which is defining, or like this, which is defining a component as a function. And you may have seen something like this, which is defining a component as a class. And without hooks, there are certain things you can do in classes that were prior to sort of the availability of hooks were not possible to do in functions. And so these mostly revolve around using state. Or sort of other things that aren't just straightforward, take your inputs, figure out how to turn them into some kind of renderable HTML or JSX or whatever, and output them, but some kind of broader state management or other kind of what we call side effects, so not direct mapping of inputs to outputs. Does that make sense so far, or are there any kind of terms here that have gone over people's heads? All right, I'll take that as it makes sense so far. So, okay, like tangibly, what does that mean? I think the best way is to illustrate it through an example. And let's see if we can, here's a great example. We'll just even set up a simple, like, Axios in a second. But so here's like, maybe you all have tried a project with Create React app. So I literally just like 5 minutes before this, I created like the out of the box project with Create React app. So this is just like total blank slate. This is like a nothing application. So as you can see, like this is a component that doesn't really do anything. It's just like it's a picture and then some text and then a link. So what hooks allow us to do? Have you guys talked about state management yet?
Yeah, we discussed it a little bit. So they know about like use state, I think.
Cool. So maybe then we'll just treat it as a kind of a recap. So what our hook will allow us to do is allow this component to remember some information sort of in its own scope. So what that means is we'll use a simple example to illustrate it, which the example that all of them seem to use is this counter, which pretty much says like there's some variable that doesn't even have a name, but or I guess it does essentially have a name called count in this case. You can name it whatever you want, but it's like a global variable that is initialized to 0. And then, we can render it here. Let's say counter count. Right. Oops. I'm old school. I still use this one. People now this is like the new fancy way to add stuff, but us old school web devs still use require. Okay, so we'll make a button that or a link that when you click it, it will increment this counter. So we'll say on click equals this set count function. Now, every time you click it, it has an error. Great. Whoa, that's fun. What did we do wrong? Oh, you got to pass a number to that. So we'll define here an anonymous function. This is first of all, this is me sort of vaguely remembering how this works, but this will be like the way that you work always from now on, for the rest of your career is like you do something, it doesn't work, you try and figure out why. In this case, I figured out why because I looked at, the documentation page. Sometimes it's to read the error message. In this case, the error message it gave was like totally bogus and totally unhelpful. You try something else, you see if that works. All right, great. Now it does the thing. So I just I want you to see like me, a professional developer with 10 years of professional experience, probably banging my head against the wall in the same way that you're doing. Like this is how the life cycle goes. So if you're like, what the hell is this error? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's normal. That's good. Like you're on the right track. That's what I'm trying to say. Cool. So what is this thing doing? Okay, well, we have this count variable that's sort of a state variable for this function. Within this function, you can basically think of it as now like instead of this function just taking some inputs, in this case, even taking no inputs and just giving some output, now it sort of maintains its own internal variable that has some action to change it, which can be invoked on anything here. And then in this case on a click, but you could add it to any event. And then you change it to anything else. In this case, we change it to the previous number plus 1. All of us have some CS background, so we don't have to cover some basic addition like that. And then that will basically tell React, hey, it's time to re-render, redisplay my component because this state variable changed. And you can imagine like way more complex versions of that. Let's just do something really, simple. Instead of a counter, let's I don't know, let's make a list. Or let's even do something similar. Let's just make a string that like adds more letters. So we'll just instead of counter, we'll have like, I don't know, we'll call it str for string. Actually, here's a lesson, like always name your variables well. What does this string gonna be? Ever growing string. So we're gonna call it this. It's gonna start empty. Ever growing string is this. And then we're gonna do this and then append the letter A. So now it should be this. Every time we click this, it's just going to get longer. So there's lots of things you could do. Another thing we could do might be like make a list. Another thing we might do might be we might have a text box, and we might have a state variable that stores the current contents of the text box. And then we might append, instead of appending A, we might append the current contents of the text box to this ever-growing string. Possibilities are infinite. Okay, that's use state. There are other hooks that do other things. Another very common one is called use effect. Use effect is, let me also back up and say, I don't know if it's valuable to talk about hooks as a general theme because each of them does something different and they're like not really related except for being hooks, but they don't really do related things. So use effect is something totally unrelated that what it happens to do is allow you to do something random, whatever you want to do, whenever right after a component renders or right after a component is deleted in some way. So just to illustrate that, we'll say use effect and we'll just like console.log and say hello. So now every time it renders, in here. Said hello. Seems like it was a code hot loader issue. Okay, 9 times out of 10, turn it off and on again, reload, whatever. Okay, so every time after it renders, it's going to print hello in the console now. So hello. After render, you can see it's not actually printing because it just says the number is increasing. So and then you can use this oftentimes to sort of synchronize your component with an external system. So either receive data, call it an external system to kind of receive data and start, maybe to display that data, which we'll talk about in a second. Or you could also just like update, say like, oh, my current state is this. Now change it some external system to have that state too. So one way you could do it is, or one thing you could do with it is to set like the page title, which right now is a React app. You could say document.title equals, and then just that ever-growing string. So now every single time, I believe after we grow, you can see that the page title is going to increase. Just like that. So again, this is like, this document title is not managed by React, but now we are controlling it. We are controlling something external from within our component using use effect, because use effect happens every time after the component is rendered. It basically allows us to hook into that and do whatever action we want. All right. Any questions on this part or any other things I should cover here? Oh, this is a good point too. You can reuse these. So let's say that we had some generic title changer. So you could also you could take this function and like use it across multiple components in a relatively generic way, instead of having to write a specific, effect for each specific component. Cool. Any other questions or any questions? Is this like a good pace? Too fast? Too slow?
I think this is a good pace. Yeah, so other people can ask questions like in the middle of it if you guys want. I'll ask, what is like a benefit of like just like running something at the beginning? Like, can you think of like a use case for like right now we like log something to the console or we changed like the title of the document, but like what else could we use something like that for? Rendering
Well,
every
let's
time.
maybe talk about Axios, and then we can like work with some external system. And that's a kind of nice segue. So Axios is a tool. So I'll get back to your question. Axios is a tool that allows you to make external requests to other, either pages on the same site or different websites. Oftentimes, you'll want to be making requests to like JSON documents or other things that are kind of machine parsable, although not always. You can use it for all kinds of different things. There is now a browser native API called the Fetch API that does the same thing, more or less, but not every browser supports it. Notably, Internet Explorer does not support it, and then certain aspects of it are not supported by other browsers. And so Axios kind of provides a browser neutral mechanism to fetch external documents. There are other libraries that do this too. Axios isn't the only way. It's like a pretty nice one. Yeah, so let's just try it out. I pulled it in here, and then I found this document that gets a bunch of cat facts. So if you see here, it's just like a JSON document that just has this list of cat facts. So what we'll do here, and I won't even like put it in use effect yet, or use it with state, which we'll do in a second. But all I do is I say axios.get, which makes a get request to this endpoint. And then I say .then. So after that's done, then I log to the console whatever the result is. So if I load, if I save that up here, so you can see the result has a bunch of this like Axios crap, and then importantly, it has data, which is this array of 5 cat facts that has text and type cat, updated at yada yada. So what we could do is we could actually use put this together with use effect and use state. And so what we'll do is we will have a state variable that stores cat facts. We'll have set facts. And by default, it'll just be an empty list, but we'll populate it with a list. And then we'll use effect to say, after this component is initialized, get the cat facts. And then when we receive a result, we'll set facts to result.data. And I say result.data because you can see in here, it's an object that contains this data, and the data is actually the array that we need. So once we do that, then what we can do is let's actually like render these results. And for now, we'll just like do JSON.stringify facts, but eventually we can do something fancier. So you see here, and what happened there was very important. You saw there was like empty brackets because that was like initially this thing got called with like, at the very beginning, facts is set to this by default, this empty array, and then we render that empty array. Then right after that, and then of course we're like doing this, which we shouldn't do. Like if facts.length. So what was happening there, I don't know if you guys noticed, but like we kept making requests to this cat facts website. So this is the network sort of monitor, and you can see it just keeps going. Because every time after we render, it does another request. And so we were making a request, rendering, setting the state again, which is causing us to render again. Anyway, here we'll only make this request when there are 0 facts, which is to say at the beginning of the movie. So now if we want, we could do something fancy, like facts.map, and then for each fact, we'll say list, and then what was it? It was fact dot text. Maybe this will work. Nope. If anybody sees this error, whatever the error is, please call it out. There is no error. It works. It's just slow. Cool. So ugly as it is, you can see we now used this Axios library to get a remote request, get a remote page. When the result comes back, then we set our state variable facts to that result data. Then React comes back and renders this again, and now facts has the facts populated, where before it was just an empty array. So first of all, use effect doesn't do anything anymore, because we were checking to make sure that it's only happens when there's no facts. And we actually render for each fact. We print out a list item with that facts text. And then, all of this stuff, not Axios.com, Axios, all this stuff is like pretty well documented. So if you're, you want to go into like more detail on how to use Axios, here's the full API. Instead of sending a URL, you can put in like all this fancy stuff like post requests to this URL with this data, how to deal with different response types, how to deal with like get versus post requests. All of this in excruciating detail is very nicely documented if you can find it. Cool. Any questions about this so far? And another illustration of that.
I have a question. So if you're using, I don't know if it's really a front end question, but if you're using Axios to get data from like a backend API that you created for your own app, how do you make sure that only you can access like those endpoints and like not other people from somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are many answers to that. I'll give you 2 of them. So one of them is it kind of depends on the type of API you have. If you're talking about, you want to make sure that if it's like from the front end perspective, like nobody else's JavaScript page can access, like let's say you have some data source that it's like dog facts, and you're making dogfacts.com, and you don't want like another site to be able to access the dog facts API. Then there is something called a cross origin policy that allows you to either explicitly allow or deny other front-end JavaScript pages to make requests to different domains. So it's like at the domain name level. And what that means is that your API will return certain headers like access control allow origin that say, tell the API or tell the browser like, hey, you're not allowed to make a request over here. And for security reasons, the browser will not do that. Now, that's not the be all and end all of protection. Depends exactly what you want to protect, because that doesn't stop let's say, a user from just directly typing in dogfact.com/API or whatever into their browser, or some, some other backend process to go and scrape that API. Another type of protection might be having some kind of login system where you have to pass in a username and password or some authentication token or something to protect it. Even that doesn't save you from somebody then taking that, copy and pasting that, and putting it somewhere else. Even if you disable copy and paste or whatever, somebody can always take a screenshot. If you disable screenshot, someone will take their phone and then take a picture of the screen. So it's hard to keep stuff safe. It's hard to keep stuff private. Everything we do, it's you got to talk about levels of safety, but those are some of the ways.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Other questions? Let's talk a little bit about Redux. Redux is a library often used with often used in addition to React, that is a better, or arguable of better, but a different and more advanced state management tool. And so in the same way that we have this state here, Redux basically allows us to manage state for very large applications, where generally what will happen is this kind of state management at the component level is not very scalable to where you have tens or hundreds of different types of components and you want them to all be able to interact with each other in some way. So I'm not going to give a demo for this one, but I'll kind of talk about the concept and I might show some of the code. So again, what's notable about React.useState or other types of component state in React itself is that they're scoped to the component level. Now, there are ways that you can pass that state to child components. Like in this case, we created a bunch of child components based on the state. And then you could even pass in the setfacts to a child component the same way that earlier we had that, we passed in that set string thing to the onClick handler of the button. But if you're passing around tons and tons and tons of callbacks, that can get pretty nasty. That also requires you to always lift your state up to the component that can, let's say you have, I don't know, a sidebar that includes some kind of selector, and then a main page that does some behavior based on that selector. If you want that sidebar selector to influence the main page using plain React state, you would have to have the state of the selector state as on the parent component of both of those, which might be messy, and you may not want to do that because you might be sharing all different types of state in between those two things. So Redux is the answer to that. Redux is a centralized state storage system where you can easily sort of declare state that exists at a kind of whole application level, and then sort of do things based on both have a simple way to change that state and then a simple way to react to that state changing. Again, not scoped just to the component, but for your whole application. So Redux is basically a implementation of this idea called flux model. And let's see if there's a good diagram here. Here. So the idea is that it's basically this. Your state store, which in this case, it's kind of transparent here, but store means the variable, the containers that are actually holding the state, exists here as some semi-private entity. And the main way to influence I guess you could have multiple stores in this model. But the main way to influence that model is through an action. So you declare these actions as types of things that change your state. So in this case, we could model it as like a fact store, and then an action called like fact loaded, and which contains a parameter with like the fact data. So you might you have your fact store, and then as soon as the facts load, you trigger a facts loaded action. The dispatcher just figures out like which store to send it to. It's pretty simple. And then that store figures out what do I do with a facts loaded action. In this case, I take that fact and I update like the set of facts to be that fact. But you could also have an action called increment. And then you know, I think it's either the dispatcher or the store is the thing that says, okay, increment action that takes my state and, you know, adds one to it. And then finally, stores update themselves and they emit a change event. Views which are like these functions, are able to react to change events, and react generally means like re-render, you know, based on the updated state. So how does that look in Redux? Let's just like look at some sample code. So, so this would be like the initial state. These are the different actions and what what sort of it does based on those actions. So you have an increment action, a decrement action, increment by amount action, and then these are essentially your functions that are exported. Now, it looks like it's the same thing, but it's not quite the same thing. These are reducers, reducers are the things that sort of make an action apply to the state. So they change the current state, they update, they say old state plus action equals new state. And these are this exports actions, not reducers. So it's like functions basically by the same name, confusingly, but that do, it's not literally this function, but a function that has this effect on the state store. And then you can, you know, run actions.increment. And let's see how we listen on it. Okay, so use selector. So I guess they have a hook called use selector where you can essentially find some subset of your state store. Again, so the concept with Redux is you store the entire application state in one place. And so a selector, I think, selects some subset of that state that's relevant to your specific component. So in this case, the component is a post list component. So you're only interested in the posts part of your state. But if there's some other part of your state that's like, I don't know, language picker, you might not care about the post. This thing might not update because posts is not related to language. So in this case, you know, this basically uses that hook and tells React to update this component when state.post changes. And then separately, something else is, you know, triggering a bunch of actions against the post store. It doesn't look like any actions are defined here, but suppose you define some actions. Something is like triggering a create post action here. Something like this, post added action that adds the given post to the list of posts. Does that make sense? Does that click? So again, this is something, you know, you can use if you're building a larger application, or also, you know, potentially if you get in the situation where like you have lots of components with lots of different state and it's very confusing how those states interact with each other, and you're passing used state from one component into the next, like it's probably time to step back and say, hey, this thing isn't working. I got to use, you know, some better state management tool beyond the component level. That's where something like Redux can help you. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Can you use Redux in conjunction with just like normal state management within a component?
Totally.
Okay.
It's very common to do that. And the reason that one would do that is because there are some types of component that like sometimes a state that only makes sense that don't like there's no value in putting them in a global state store. So even in this example, I kind of caught that they have a add post form component, and in this one they have a title and post title and post contents, and they have like component specific state for like just as you're typing that out, it's updating the component state. But then when you hit the button, like the save button, then it updates the global state store, with your completed changes.
For sure. I also heard that there was something about like context in React. I don't know if that's like the right term, but there's some other way of like storing like a sort of like a global state in React without Redux, right?
Very possible. I'm not familiar with it. Is anyone else
like
familiar with it?
Yeah, like React context is basically like the newfangled. It's like new. It's like related to hooks, sort of. Allows you to do a very similar thing, except like you're basically like you can wrap components in like a certain degree of context, which allows like cousins to share state across each other. And some people say that you can sort of replace using Redux with using context. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with exactly how it's implemented, but I think it's sort of native to React now. So,
all right, let's find out which one we should choose. There's like a lot of text to figure out. Skip to conclusion. Who wins? Redux is boilerplate and requires a bunch of libraries. It remains a great solution. Okay, so this person says, if you want something that's complex and has high frequency updates, use Redux. If you want something that's simple and has small, types of state, maybe use context. Yeah, I am not familiar with this. Seems pretty new. Cool. That's all I had. Anything else? You think we should go through, or do you want to talk about React, or this sort of stuff?
yeah, well, so this basically concludes our React series. After this, we'll move on to talking a bit about UI UX, and then some like CSS, like pre-compilation methods, and then there's going to be like a little bit about backend primers and TypeScript and Next, I think. So that's sort of what's coming in the future. But right now we have like the fundamentals of React sort of down, and like there's like a whole bunch of like more content to look at, like context, which we've just like sort of touched upon right now, Redux. So that is like something that we're gonna have to sort of explore on our own. We have a hackathon coming up, and there's also like the final React project, which are both sort of like heavily dependent on your own experimentation and like asking the right questions and everything like that. So I guess at this point, since we've covered the basics of React, if you guys have any like overarching like questions to ask about, I don't know, like how to design like React components, or like when to create a component, or any sort of fundamental questions, now would be a good time to ask them so we could recap.
We can also open it up to just any questions about, as I was mentioning earlier, like what it's like to be a programmer, anything like that.
Yeah, so feel free to ask any of those questions as well. Does anyone else have any questions for Dimitri? If not, I will ask questions.
What startup life is like?
Okay. Oh, that's a good question, Dimitri. That's a good question you asked yourself. Go ahead.
Well, what is startup life like?
Yeah. What is it like?
There's a lot of ways you can answer that. I think they're the best ones. If you sort of at the stage you're at right now, or like right after you graduate, if you go to a startup, it's a fantastic way to learn a lot very fast. You probably, depending on where you go, you will not get very much mentorship, and there's definitely, the smaller the startup is, like the less you'll get. And so it'll be a lot of figuring things out yourself. So you just kind of have to figure out for yourself, like what kind of, environment do you want to work in? Is you want to work like closely under somebody else who can teach you the ropes, or do you want to work with, do you want to figure it out yourself? That's, I think, like going to be the biggest, most tangible difference. Certainly, like there are many corollaries from that. Like, there's a lot of freedom that comes with a startup, that like you can do whatever you want all day, but like that could be daunting and overwhelming for some folks, just as much as it's exciting for others. That's I think the axis that's most important, like for you to make a decision on. Certainly in terms of like starting a startup, super difficult and scary and time consuming, and you have to be 110% bought in that that's what you want to do, and like what you want to kind of resign your life to 24/7 for the next foreseeable future. The average startup to IPO time is something like 10 years, for those that don't know. So if things go well, you'll be at that for it. You'll be, it's a long slog.
Awesome. Thank you, Dimitri. I guess like
I don't mean that discouragingly. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun too. Has extreme highs and extreme lows, and it's like the best roller coaster you've ever been on. I even hate roller coasters, but I like working at a startup. But it's crazy. It's a lot of fun. But you just like be prepared.
Got to keep hustling. Yeah. So I guess this is like the classic question that like everybody asks. Like there's just like so many like languages and libraries and frameworks, especially like I feel like in web development, it's constantly evolving, and new things are sort of like continually popping up. How do you sort of choose like what to learn first, or in order to be like useful or do cool things early on?
Yeah. This is not a direct answer to your question, but the most, like what I could say is it doesn't matter, in the sense that like the thing that will set you apart is not being good at React or being good at Redux or being good at the next thing. It's being able to learn really fast, pick things up, jump into a situation with like no idea what's going on, and like sort it out and figure it out. That comes, and like I think actually front-end web development is like a really good sort of breeding ground for that kind of ability, because things are changing so quickly that like just learn whatever's in front of you. It's important to like pick something and stick with it for a little bit, right? So like if it's React, like stick with React for a couple of months and like figure out, get in the weeds with React and really figure it out. But like your, one level of your, prospective employer is going to be asking how well do you know React, but the next level is going to be like, how fast did you learn React? How fast can you learn the next thing, when React goes out of vogue? Because both things are changing all the time, and you're just more valuable as as an employee if you can. If I can say, hey, today you're working on React, tomorrow I need you on backend development, and the next day I need you as an Android engineer, and like you can go in and jump in and learn that stuff. So learn to learn is the most important thing. And it's fun. Like it's fun to be able to like jump into any problem and figure it out.
Yeah, so I guess like after this, like we're gonna be doing some backend stuff. Is there like a particular like, or not, I guess not a particular backend technology, but like
They all suck.
they all suck. Great.
They're all horrible.
Okay.
Front end is worse though.
Thanks, Dimitri.
No, I mean, look, like people were building awesome things in like 1970 with Fortran, and people are building awesome things today, you know, with React, but the technology is not make or break 99% of the time. There are like very, very unique specific cases where that's the differentiator, but there's like a phrase that's used sometimes, like people like a boring technology. 99% of the time, you know, you want to use boring technology. And these days, like, it's not like, you know, use Fortran, it's like use React because everybody's using React. Like, there's value in that because, you know, for me as somebody who wants to go build a team, I'm going to go, you know, it's much easier for me to say, oh, I'm going to hire 3 more React engineers than to say, hey, we have this custom framework that we spend months building, and now you have to come here, you know, to our company and spend your first 6 months just learning that framework versus like I could get people who already know React. And you know, if you come here and spend 6 months learning our framework, you're going to feel like, well, now I'm less valuable to the next employer because I know this, you know, arcane thing that nobody else is going to need, versus like, hey, it's great, I can learn a little bit of React on the job, and then that sets me up in a great position if I want to stay or if I want to do something else. Now I know React, and you know, it's a super valuable thing. So, you know, pick the boring stuff.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So, how did you, I guess, personally stumble upon the problem which your company chooses to address, and then why did you choose to stick with it?
And why did we choose which?
Why did you choose to stick with it?
With the problem or with the company, or which one?
With the problem that your company addresses.
That's a great question. So the best, I'll give a generic answer, and then I'll give a specific answer. The generic answer is like, look, anybody, not to like put you down, but like anybody can like build a web form with React. Anybody can like spin up a Java service, you know, and put it on AWS. What sets you apart or sets anybody apart is like, what do you do with it? How do you apply that, right? Programming, and I think I've heard this even today from some folks on this call, like programming is not a means to an end in it, or it's not an end in itself, it's a means to some other end. And so oftentimes, you know, these ideas, sometimes they come from programmers writing code, but more frequently they come from like having some experience in a second field that like now you've realized how to apply programming to solve that field's problems. And maybe that field is very related, maybe it's totally different. So that's the generic answer. For us specifically, it's actually a more programming related, which is that we we did like a couple of things before. One idea that we were working on, which like in retrospect sounds pretty silly, but it was building, this was like an idea that never got much traction. It was building a photo book app where you could like take the photos that you took on your phone and like arrange them into a photo book and like buy a physical book, which was just like, oh, you know, grandma likes photo books, so let's send her some photo books of the photos we're taking, which we use phones these days. That's like how, you know, it's like an easy idea to stumble upon. Turns out all the easy ideas are either done or not worth doing, as you'll find out. What we found out with that one is that idea is like very, very well done by people who, you know, have way, way, way more resources than we could possibly have. And so it just like didn't make sense as a business. In the course of doing that, we realized we're trying to build promotional campaigns to like do something like get one book, send a link to a friend. If they like click your link and buy a book, then you get a book free. Just like do some referral program. Turns out like that's like super hard in apps because links don't really work for apps the way that they do for the web. And so we kind of stumbled on like, what if we just build links for apps? We spent a couple of months on that, and then we very quickly realized like you're selling a problem, you're not really selling like a solution. A solution is like referral programs or, you know, email links or ad links or like those, because generally like selling developer tools, not like a really good business. What's a good business is like selling ad tools or marketing, like being closer where the money is. Then we realized so that's actually have that business. It's like, you know, making however tens of millions per year. The more interesting thing that we realized is like when you start like when you become the linking platform for apps, and now it's like tens of thousands of apps, then you develop this database of like links to every single piece of app content, and from that, like, what do you do with a link? You know, we experimented like, what if you sell that in some way? There's not really a good way to package that up and sell that except as a search engine. And really, we just like stumbled on this opportunity to like huge, you know, potential for searching through these links, and it's something that people actually want to find, and it kind of simplifies the phone navigation. We realized that like that's how, you know, the similar transformation that web navigation went through, where like way back in the early days of the web, there were web portals where you literally like you went to your homepage that had like, you know, every other website's homepage on it, and you click that one, and then you navigate within that one. Now everybody just searches everything, but yet on your phone you're still like going to the home screen, tapping the app icon, and then going from there. And like we are the only ones with basically that data set to fix this problem. And so from there, it just kind of why we stuck with it is more about like market validation. So for the links, it was like we talked to a bunch of folks who had apps like, hey, do you want this product? And then for the search, it was like talking to phone manufacturers, which is a very lengthy process, and saying like, hey, we're solving the search problem. Does that seem like something you're gonna want to include on your devices? And now we're on, tens of millions of devices. So maybe hundreds. I don't even remember anymore. But yeah.
Great answer. Yeah, those. I think like that's exactly like the type of question that like people need to ask when they're like making startups and like working on that type of thing. I guess like one like last question that I had was like, how would you like recommend that people find their first job as like a software engineer, like right out of college, after having like some experience like with CS in school and things like that?
Yeah. Let me amend my previous answer with just what you said inspired me one more thing, which is that like you don't need to try and take over the world. Generally, like startups work better if you start with something small and grow it than like decide like step one is take over the world. So that's important too. Okay, how do you like get your first job? You guys are in like a super lucky position to be getting CS or other degrees from like one of the most prestigious universities in the world. It's going to be super easy for you, especially right now. It's like a job hunter's market. Like you guys, we're here as employers, like groveling at the feet of every person who wants to go into industry, because there's way more job openings than there are people to fill them. So what that means is, and that could change, and that could even change by the time some of you graduate. But like, I think it is important to understand the market dynamics, because that changes the way you look for a job, in the sense that you could be a lot more picky in a market where there's so many jobs. And so, it's worth it, I think, to apply to quite a few places, and then to spend the time to really get to know them and to think about what you want. And again, I know this is generic advice, but like, think about, what do you enjoy in your day-to-day? Do you enjoy structure, or do you enjoy freedom and autonomy? Do you enjoy, these days, by the time you guys graduate, you enjoy going to the office and being with other people, or working from the beach? There's going to be different companies that work different ways, and that like, there's no right answer to that. There's definite strengths and weaknesses to each, and it's just very personal. And then I think like the last, like, here, this is like the crazy thing about interviews to me. You spend whatever 6 hours on site with a company, generally through like, a bunch of panels. So you're like with a given person for like 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. They ask you questions for like 90% of that time, and then you get like 5 minutes at the end to ask them questions. Like, use the most of that, and then like ask for more if you can, because you need to be figuring out like, what is it, like, I'm going to show up to this job for whatever 8, 9, 10 hours a day for like the next couple of years. That's a like crap load of your time, of your life. You want to figure out like, what is that good? What's that going to look like? What's my day going to be? Who am I going to work with? Are they nice people? How am I going to figure out what to work on next? How does this team communicate? What is it like? Do they have a more kind of passive or assertive or aggressive communication style? How do we resolve problems? What are some major problems that this team had? Why do you need my position? Like, did somebody leave, or are you just like, there's like a lot of stuff to find out. And so I know this is not like, okay, how do you go find a job? That's the easy part. I trust that you all can figure out. I would encourage you to like think really hard about how you actually want to like spend whatever it is, like a third or more of your life, of your like hours in your day for the next couple of years. And ask each company some set of questions to try and tease out like, what does this actually mean? Like, try and do some like envisioning exercise. Envision yourself like showing up for work there every day for the next couple of years. See if like you envision yourself as happy in that scenario or not. And then like, if you don't know, then ask the question, like, whatever it is, like, what is that thing? Like, I need to know who's going to be sitting next to me. What are they like? Or I need to know, what does my desk look like? Or I need to know, there's what that means for, what that is for you is going to be different. So you need to ask different questions. But like, when a candidate comes to me for an interview, and like, I ask, hey, what are your questions for me? And they're like, oh, I kind of get the picture already. I'm like, that's such a wasted opportunity. Like, use the most of that. You should be going over time with every single interviewer.
So, like off of that, like, I guess what would be your definition of like your advice for maintaining like a good like work-life balance and being like happy with the place that you work?
Great question. Those aren't necessarily the same thing, by the way. I think it's just important to do the things, like work on the problems. I guess maybe even go a higher level. Every person has something different that motivates them. You probably don't know that yet, because you need to try out, like, at least for me, like I only found that out by like trying out a couple of things and seeing what works for me and seeing what doesn't. For me, like really motivating is working with very smart people, which is like a generic thing, everybody can say it, but like for me, that's like more motivating than like working on a specific type of problem or in a specific space. Whereas for other people, it's like, I really want to solve, let's say I have a friend who like really wants to solve some like social justice issues, and so like they'll put up with assholes in the workplace because they like care about social justice. So you need to figure out kind of, I think, through trial and error, like what's important to you. And then like, and again, like you're guys in a super lucky position where you have, huge opportunities in front of you, and you have the ability to try things out, see what works for you, either try internships or try a job. If you don't like it, work with them to see if they have different opportunities. Otherwise, try and change jobs. There's a lot of stuff out there. And like, that's going to be the biggest difference in like whether you're happy or not. And like that, to me, from what I've seen, is way more important than work-life balance or anything like that. Is like, it doesn't really matter if you work, if you're like excited about the things you're working on, if you're working 7 hours a day or 10 hours a day, like doesn't make a big difference. If it's, if you're dreading going to work because like you don't like the people or you don't like the problems or whatever it is, then even 1 hour is going to suck. So then beyond that, I think that the thing that this is like, especially as you get like past maybe the first 2 years of your career, then you start to get into this, like, then I think the work-life balance thing becomes maybe more important to kind of hone in on, as you're like, okay, I've got like the high level, like I know what things I want to do. Now I just got to like iterate and like improve my life and my situation. And then I think what comes down to me is like setting expectations and being very clear with, what is possible or what's not possible, or what you're willing to do or what you're not willing to do. For example, if your employer says like, hey, we need you to work this weekend to, help us with this milestone, you're perfectly within your right to say like, no, I can't do that. Sorry. That's like an expectation that you can set with them. You can even go in, day one and say like, hey, I am never working a weekend here because what motivates me is like having weekends to spend with my family, whatever. It's on you to like set that stuff up for yourself, but not just for yourself, like for other people. Communicate proactively ahead of time so that everybody knows like what to expect from you. Like the worst thing is surprises. For not just for you, but like for other people, if you can be the most unsurprising person, even if it's like in what they might view as a sucky way, like, oh, this guy never works past 5 p.m. or something. If you set that up and you say during the interview, hey, my plan is to never work past 5 p.m., please make me an offer only if you think that's okay. Then it's good for all people. Like, especially again, in this kind of more lucky market where, you guys have the sort of opportunity to, and the privilege of like being very picky about what you choose. You could set up kind of whatever you want. A lot of people also have a lot of trouble, I would say, with like figuring that out for themselves. Definitely like carve out some time and some mental space, whether it's in the evenings or weekends or whatever, to like think about what makes you happy. Because a lot of people are just like on the hamster wheel and like don't give that any thought, either from like the problem space or even just like, hey, I really feel better if I stop working at 6 p.m. Like make sure to spend the time to give that some thought, because the worst thing for you and for everybody around you is for you to get caught up in this thing, and then like you're working to 8 p.m. every day and you feel shitty and you work, but you don't have time to think about it. So then you do the same thing for like months on end, and then you're like, oh man, I'm so burnt out. The only thing I can do is like quit. But like that may be a job that you would otherwise enjoy. It's just that you didn't have a chance to like step back and be like, hey, what's really bothering me is like, spending too much time, and I could probably just say, hey, I can't take on this much work. All right, I'll stop ranting. Next question. And maybe if other people then have questions, not to, these are great questions. I want to make sure other people have a chance too.
I guess in a field that's very centered around industry, what would you say are the pros and cons of going into industry versus doing research or exploring like postgraduate options?
That's a great question for me, because I dropped out of undergrad after 1 quarter. So I'm very biased, but I'd say this. There are a small set of problems that are best explored in academia, and those are like pure CS problems that have no industrial application, or things that have industrial application that's like very far from being practical, such that like companies don't want to invest in figuring out the solution to those problems. But this is especially at the higher level of grad programs, like math. Okay, bachelor's in CS, like worth doing. Master's in CS, it's still going to be mostly, I think, in most master's programs, mostly sort of practically focused. And I think it's those many people who stop at masters are folks who did not have maybe quite as much focus on CS as they wanted to in undergrad. So it'd be like if you did, I don't know, a like electrical engineering in undergrad, you took some CS classes, but you really want to like double down on CS so you get a CS master's. If you're talking about like PhD or postdoc, that's where like you have to be researching something that like is totally nobody in industry cares about this thing, or is like so far ahead that like maybe the industry people will care in 20 years. But like at this point, even the stuff that like industry is going to care about in 5 years or in 10 years, like the big companies are like so far ahead of the ball that they have research labs that are investing in that stuff. So it's like not a big difference to like do a PhD versus like have a research position at Google. Now, I would actually think like they're equally sort of easy or difficult to get into in either case. So yeah, it's hard to like say without more specifics than that. It kind of depends on the specific area. Also say like industry is a great way to learn. It's a great way to especially to like keep up with things as they change. Just I think you'll learn super fast. Find a job that has like a good mentor for you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, great. I'm going to take that as a no, but if someone has any questions, they can sort of just jump in at this point. Yeah, so it's like 7:22. You guys have a GM meeting in like, I think there's a general meeting in like 10 minutes or something. Yeah, so kind of give you some time for that. But thank you guys for coming to these lectures. This is the final React lecture. Looking forward to the next few lectures as well. Dimitri, thank you so much for taking the time to like do all this like React stuff, teach lecture, and then answer all of these questions for so long.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely
if
learned a lot.
folks want to follow up with me, I'll just I put my email address in the Zoom chat. If you have questions or if you want to like hop on a Zoom virtual coffee or something like that, definitely happy to help you. Probably not the best person to help with React, but I can definitely help you talk about startups or talk about having a job in industry or anything like that. Or maybe I can help you with React.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Dimitri. Huge. Yeah, so we'll probably just end this meeting here and then give you guys some time before the general meeting. But yeah, make sure to come to that. Dimitri, you can come to that if you want. But yeah, so
I grab some dinner.
Yeah, you can go get dinner instead. Awesome. So yep, thanks guys for coming again. You could probably stick around if you want, but
all right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.